Hello everyone, welcome to another Cracking the Coding interview question. Today we're going to be looking at question number 1.2, check permutations. And the question today is going to be given two strings, write a method to decide if one is a permutation of the other. So that's the main question that we're going to be tackling today. And this is actually a pretty simple problem when you think about what a permutation is. And when you actually get further requirements on the question. So you want to start out by asking for more details, basically. Let me get flipped over here. So you want to ask first if case matters. So basically you want to know if God is equal to dog, right? This has a capital G versus lowercase. So is it case sensitive or is it case insensitive? Okay, and then you want to know if white space matters. So technically you could do God, does that equal Dog, right? And we're going to say that white space does matter, and also that the comparison is going to be case sensitive. So you want to ask those two questions if you're in an interview and they ask you something like this. Just dig a little bit deeper. Try to get clarifying requirements about the input of the method, and go from there. So one of the solutions that you can do is to sort both of the strings and then compare them. So that's the first solution we'll implement. And there's also, if the strings aren't the same length, then we know that it's not a permutation, right? So they have to be the same length in order to be a permutation, which can allow us to short circuit a lot of these problems here. So we're going to write our sort method, which takes in S as the string. We're going to create a character array called content, and then convert the input string to the character array. We're going to use the Java util arrays.sort, which can sort the character array. And then we're going to turn a new string instantiated with our content array. So this is going to be our sort method. Now we're going to write our permutation method, which takes in two strings, s and t. And if s.length is not equal to t.length, then we're going to return false. So we're going to check the length first. Okay. And then otherwise we're going to return sort of s dot equals sort of t. So we're just going to compare those two strings that are returned and see if they're equivalent. So let's go ahead and test it. I'm going to make this a static method. Let's see here. And we'll make this static as well. So I should be able to run permutation, dog, and God. And we're going to just print that out. Okay. So let's run this guy and see what we get. We would expect this to return true, which it did. Okay, right here. Now let's add some white space and run it again. We'll expect this to return false, which it did. So this is important here, checking the length, get to the very definition of what a permutation is. A lot of times with interview questions, they'll ask you and they'll provide a definition of something that contains ways to short circuit the computation and save you time. So anytime two strings come into here that aren't the same length, then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry about sorting because there's no way that those can be permutations. Okay. There's another way that we can actually implement this, and it's basically by keeping track of how many times we encounter certain characters. So the example that they have in the book, and once again we're using Cracking the Coding Interview, they actually use an array. So we'll do the array implementation here so that you can see what that looks like. And I'll walk you through it as we code it. Permutation, it takes in the string S and a string T. And we're going to name this permutation 2, just so that we can keep our old example. So for this one, we're going to check the length again and return false if their length isn't equivalent. Then we're going to create a character array. It's actually an integer array, but it's going to represent the full set of ASCII integers, 0 through 128. And then we're going to create our character array from the input string. So now we have S as an array. And now we're going to iterate through every item here. And we're going to increment the integer value that is inside of that letters array. All right. So now we're going to go through the second string that's passed in, and we're going to say C is t.character at I. So now we know where in the array we want to look. We're just going to subtract. So let's say we're going through our example with dog and God, and we get to the D, right? So when we go through DOG in S, we'll increment letters at D, we'll increment letters at O, and letters at G. So those three indexes in the letters array will have a value of 1. Then as we come into the second for loop, we'll go through GOD. And so we'll be subtracting each time. Okay. And we'll step through it with the debugger just to get a better idea. Less than 0. Return false. So if we subtract more than we added, that means that T has different letters present, different characters than the S value. All right. And if we make it through, then we can return true. Okay. So let's go and we'll put our debug statement here, and let's debug this code and see what we get. So this one is using, once again, the index array. It's an integer array, and it accounts for the ASCII character set. So you want to ask to make sure that is an assumption. This line is an assumption that we're using ASCII, and there are only possible 128 characters. Okay, so we hit false here because we left that space in, so the length is 4 for S, the length is 3 for T. We return false. That's great. So let's remove that space and let's run it again. We should make it through this if statement. Great. Now we've got our letters array that is an array of 128 integers. For each character here, we're going to increment that array. So D has an ASCII value of 100. So that gets incremented. O has an ASCII value of 0. And G has an ASCII value of 103. Okay. So now we should have letters, and if we go to those values, we should have a 1 inside of them. Yeah, 100, 103, and 111. Okay? So now we're going to be iterating through t to get those same values, the ASCII representation of the character, and we'll do the subtractions. As you can see, 111, letters at C minus minus, that should now be exactly 0. And D is going to be 100. We subtract the letters at 100, and it is exactly 0, and we return true. So there you have it. There are 2 different ways that you can implement this particular solution. You can also try on your own by implementing a hash map. So each time you encounter a particular character, put it in a hash map and increment the value. And then you can check that at the end to make sure that they're all 0 when you do the comparison. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Do remember you can go to mindfulbit.com to check out all my latest blog posts. I also do offer coaching. So sign up for a free 30-minute session where I'd like to get to know you and what your goals are and what you're working towards. So look forward to that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.